Good afternoon, everybody out there in the world of cultivation and cannabis, and welcome to our inaugural Lean Cultivation webinar. What we're talking about today, big topics, but we want to narrow it down in on technology and cultivation and best practices. But at the highest level, we know that cannabis is becoming a commodity. So today we hope to dive into what lessons we can adopt from the industry 4.0, from new technologies, from lean manufacturing, to ensure that as a industry and as an ecosystem, we can ensure sustainable growth in this market. And that means helping operators, attain consistent quality, but also satisfy consumer demands, and in doing so, with healthy profit margins as well, of course, to really build a sustainable industry. My name is Ian Seiferling. I'm CEO of Adaviv, and I'll be your moderator for this discussion alongside my COO and colleague, Julian. Personally, I have a background in plant science and data science, agriculture and image processing, and Julian has a background in economics, industrial engineering, and lean. We both met at MIT, where we, together with our other co-founder, Mo Vazife, founded Adaviv. And we are an AI-driven lean cultivation platform that leverages our machine vision technologies and AI technologies to help cultivations address some of these challenges. But today is, it's not about us, it's about these awesome folks we have on the panel joining us and the things we can learn from them. And so we're joined today by our esteemed colleagues representing several market leaders from the industry. First, Alex Pryor, VP of Cultivation at Revolutionary Clinics. Julian Wilches, Chief Regulatory Officer and co-founder of Clever Leaves. And Hoelscer, Manager of Environmental Science Group and Senior PCA at Urban-Gro. And I would love if each of these guys can give you a little bit more about themselves and their companies in a short intro, maybe starting with you, Alex.
Hey everyone, my name is Alex Pryor. I've been in the cannabis industry for going on 2 decades now. Started off in Santa Cruz, California in the Bay Area. Worked with a number of different dispensaries out there, built out indoor greenhouse and full sun, also light depth. We ended up doing about 80,000 square feet of canopy between 5 different facilities out in the Bay Area. Expanded that and worked that for about a decade. Then been doing consulting, helping turn around different legacy businesses. And most recently been working with Revolutionary Clinics as their VP of Cultivation, working on creating new brands, Mile 62, some of the high-tech flower that we have coming out of there. And really working with this team, best team in the business, to continue to produce good, clean cannabis for Massachusetts. And we use Adaviv at Revolutionary Clinics. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about that experience using Adaviv.
Thank you, Alex. And we can attest to you guys being one of the best teams out there in the industry. And I gather that beautiful image in your background is from those days in California.
Yes, sir.
That's great. Julian Wilches from Clever Leaves. Can you give us a brief intro about yourself? But I'm sure many folks have heard of Clever Leaves. Great name out there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian, for the invitation, and Julian. My background is in drug policy or in narcotics policy. I worked for the Colombian government for some years. I was a consultant for the United Nations, for the US Embassy in Colombia. I became the drug policy director in Colombia in 2011 and until 2014. After a couple of years of doing another master degree, I started being part of this project, which is Clever Leaves. So with a couple of partners, we co-founded the company in 2016. In 2018, we partnered with a private equity fund in Northern Swan, based in New York. In 2019, we became a single company between Northern Swan and Clever Leaves. And in 2020, we listed the company in NASDAQ in December 2020. And since then, we are over there. We have operations in Colombia, which is EU GMP certified, in Portugal, which is IMC GAP certified, which is the Israeli standards, and in the process of becoming GMP certified also over there, and also have an operation in the US, not related to cannabis, but to nutraceuticals, but it has more than 30,000 distribution points around the US. And that's us, guys.
Amazing. Thank you, Julian. Very impressive. And I'm really excited to kind of bring in that global perspective and the different standards that you guys have to deal with versus the American market, which is, you know, its own very own thing and very own beast that Alex and Huston will be able to attest to. But I think we're all trying to go in the same direction. So we'll really interested to hear where these different perspectives go. Huston, last but not least, of Urban-Gro, one of the big providers of all the tools and build outs that these guys use.
Yeah, first off, again, thank you guys for having me today and putting this on. My name is Hoelscer. Just over about a decade working in the horticulture and cannabis industry, starting with getting my degree from Oklahoma State University in horticulture science. From there, I've worked in everything from traditional nursery production horticulture, as well as spending time at the ecology department at CU Boulder. And then from there, working with a couple craft cannabis operations in the Boulder, Colorado area as a production specialist. With the Urban-Gro, and SOPs for cannabis facilities. So, that's just a little bit about my background, and again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Amazing, thank you, Huston. Really excited to get your perspective on exactly what you just mentioned at the last, you know, how you bring improved SOPs and particularly plant health and IPM, something that's close to our hearts as well. So thank you guys. I'll hand it off to Julian just to do a super quick house cleaning here about how this will run.
Thank you, team. Excited to be here with you and to hear about your thoughts on lean cultivation and Industry 4.0. Then a little bit of housekeeping. Please, if you have any questions for our panelists or us as moderators, while we're presenting, feel free to drop them into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screens. We will discuss a few topics first, but then we will try to answer as much as we can all of your questions today, and we will do our best, if not, to get back to you with responses after this webinar. Let's do this. Let's dive in.
Let's do it. So we're going to go to full screen here. In a second. But yes, first topic, you know, we want to start out big and then kind of see where the conversation goes and dive in. But we are talking about, you know, this idea of the industry of cannabis becoming commoditized, a commoditization of a cash crop in now a maturing market, but one that also has to deal with some still remnants, you know, of an illicit competition, of taxation, regulations, but prices have really gone down, you know, recently in the market. There's this idea of what does $1,000 a pound mean for operators. So the first topic or first question here to get started, I'd like to direct at Alex. And first of all, do you agree? How low do you think it will go? You're an extremely experienced grower, of course. You mentioned, you know, starting in the legacy days of NorCal, now to running one of the fastest growing companies in the US that's really aimed to achieve the best quality, highest quality at a really efficient cost per gram. So, where do you see the market going in terms of this pricing, and what levers are you looking to actuate on to optimize the cost per gram as a cultivator?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question because it's hitting everybody at home right now. This is on everyone's mind. I spoke to two friends today from California, and that is not an unusual morning, talking about where prices are at, offering to sell distressed businesses. It's a very serious thing that cultivators need to take seriously, and the craft narrative right now is not working. Frankly, small farmers need to focus a little bit more on delighting the customers and less on what's actually going on behind the scenes, because I hate to say this, but frankly, the market doesn't care. And that's something it took me 5-6 years to really come to terms with, and I came to terms with it through my wallet. So just to give a quick price history here, back in 2010 forward. So 2010, we were looking at anywhere from 2,200 to 2,600 a pound wholesale for indoor cannabis, really good indoor cannabis. You could potentially get more if you had something like Girl Scout cookies or cherry pie, or some really well ripened out 10-week OGs. But for the most part, you were looking in that 22 to 26 range. Anything over 100 pounds, you're looking in the 18 to 2,200 range. So to see those prices come down over time, and they always do the up and down, seasonally, because the flood comes in at the end of the year, and prices go down for a very long time and they get suppressed. But this has continued to go up and up and up and up, and it reached an absolute high point about 3 years ago. The legacy market, people were getting 5-6K a pound again for exotic stuff, exotics, which was a new category. And that 5-6 a pound should have been a harbinger of doom. We should have known what was about to happen. Now the prices in both the legacy market and in the whatever you want to call it, legal regulated market, are very low. A big part of this is because of light depth. So light depth has become more and more advanced, especially in California. We're getting to the point where it's almost completely indistinguishable from AA or AAA indoor flower. So when people are selling that for right now in Southern California, light depths are going between $400 and $750 a pound. And that is absolutely crushing for the indoor craft growers, and even for the outdoor craft growers at this point. So getting really serious about leveraging tools like Adaviv. I mean, I know we're on an Adaviv webinar here. There's a number of other tools to also leverage as well, but leveraging a tool like Adaviv, that's going to be a big deal for your 5,000 square foot, your 10,000 square foot, your 20,000 square foot facilities to stay alive. And being able to use Adaviv, number one, we reduced the amount of people that we were using to scout. We were able to reduce that by 3.5 full-time employees, which is pretty significant savings right there. We didn't do this by firing anybody, but this is just something that happened as a result of attrition. We don't fire for anything that has to do with lean or moving into industry 4.0. I think it's extremely detrimental to the cannabis culture because of what people put into it and how passionate they are. But all in all, everybody does understand from that point of view. I think growers and our employees actually understand this better than most employees would, because they've had their own grows before where they've had to deal with the cost of producing goods. So long story short, without getting, if we're getting down to $1,000 a pound in indoor, and we absolutely are. It's happening in California, it's happening in Massachusetts, and without being able to get our cost of goods down, and we have a ceiling on yield. Most of us have reached our yield after tweaking it, 120, 130, 140 grams per square foot, across 20 different varieties. It's unlikely you're going to be able to get much more than that. So then you have to look at your cost, and you have to leverage tools like Adaviv, because the biggest thing that can happen right now is crop loss. You have a crop loss, or you have too high of labor cost, and you're going to have a very serious issue.
Great, good points. Thank you, Alex. So yeah, good stuff. We do want to touch on some of that labor aspects later. Houston, following on that line, you guys work with growers across the nation, implementing processes, implementing equipment to address some of these challenges. So kind of a little bit of the same, like under that umbrella of those pressures that Alex just spoke about. I guess, where do you see the biggest gaps in the industry to get these efficiencies to stay competitive? Yeah.
That's a great question, Alex. I think you're so on point with where the market's at and utilizing this very incredible technology that Adaviv has developed. But not only that, kind of going back on the SOP development and the organization actually within the grow, making sure that the team that you guys have in your operation are following a type of SOP, that everyone's on the same board, following that week by week. What are we spraying in week 1, week 2, week 3, just so that you're utilizing those practices in a good, thorough way, and then making sure that the communication within the facility itself is taking place. If you have good communication, good organization, you're going to find yourself running into a lot of different issues. And I really want to point out, like on those SOP and the standards, when you have that good organization, it's utilizing proactive measures in the grow. So you have those proactive measures where you have yourself behind the gun and losing crop loss, but actually implementing stuff before problems actually start.
Right, it's being proactive. Yeah, well, hopefully can dive into what some of those proactive tools and processes can be. I do want to get Julian's input here as well, because I think you've got a really great view on where the market's going, and you've also operate across borders with a pharmaceutical product at Clever Leaves. You deal with GMP standards, which by nature perhaps arguably force you to be lean and efficient. So would love to kind of hear about some of the operational and cultivation technologies, SOPs that you guys have had to implement to operate within those standards, but do it in a way that is gonna, help you guys get profitable when you are growing and shipping across borders.
Sure, but let me step back a little bit for discussing some structural things, I will say, or strategic decisions that we've taken in the past. The first one will be where to locate our operations. This is starting from the idea that this is going to be a global business at some point, and it is becoming a global business every day. Probably in the US, the discussion is in a bubble inside the States because of the federal regulation that we all know. But there are big markets in Israel, Australia, Germany, Brazil, even the UK or Poland are becoming interesting markets. Spain, France. So as the business becomes more global, it is of the essence to be strategically located, I will say. Our cultivation site in Colombia can produce a gram of dry flower at 5 or 6 cents per gram, which is considerably lower than the price that you can or the costs that you have in other countries. So as the global or as the business becomes more global, we're going to be more competitive if we can produce in countries like Colombia. That's one. So globalization is one idea that is of the essence when talking about how to deal with the commoditization process. Second idea is that as we're playing in the pharmaceutical industry, quality is of the essence and is a very big differentiator in the industry. So if you want to sell extract or standardized extract, let's say an oral solution, 20% CBD, 1% THC, the price will be, I don't know, 5, 6x if you're EU GMP certified instead of being just a manufacturer without certifications. Of course, dealing with or operating under EU GMP standards is a challenge. First to obtain, but two, to keep the certification and work every day under these standards. That implies a lot of efforts in terms of SOPs. Everything is an SOP. Let's start by saying that. And the third thing I will say that is traceability and supply chain. If you want to sell an oral solution to a client and you can have the traceability of all the products until the mother plant, that gives the client confidence, and it's a must in the pharmaceutical industry, I will say. And supply chain, it's I can remember somebody saying, if you want to differentiate your company in the cannabis industry, you just have to do what you promise you will do. And that's a big differentiator. And some of our clients share with us stories about other companies in the past promising certain volumes or certain quality and then not delivering it in the time frame that they promise or in the quality that they promise. So standardization, supply chain, quality, and taking into account that it's a global business, are some strategic or structural decisions that a company should take in addition to the operation itself in a relationship with technology and SOPs. The latter is more a consequence of your strategic decisions.
Great point, amigo. It's well said. And I guess now we're gonna play a little bit with the crystal ball, amigo Alex. And let's think about then in the US, once we have full legalization, do you think it's gonna be the same? Like, how do you think operators need to adapt to comply to potential new high quality standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think without a doubt, the FDA is going to have some kind of oversight here. Whether that ends up being oversight over a separate medical regulated industry, or rather pharmaceutical regulated industry at that point, or if that ends up being something where it's considered ATF for regulation of recreational. Once we have full legalization, it does not necessarily mean that we're going to have interstate commerce yet. That's still more to unpack there in terms of legislatively. Full legalization won't necessarily allow interstate commerce immediately. So that's something that we have to take into account in terms of how much longer that's going to take. I think it's actually a good thing because it'll give operators a longer time to begin complying with EU GMP standards. Without a doubt, this is something we want to move towards for pharmaceutical. We've actually begun in the last few months moving towards a GMP type process at Rev in the cultivation department, implementing our SOPs through a system called Axonify. Shout out to our HR department for helping us set that up, Kaylee Logsden. That has been really helpful in just starting the conversation around documenting everything. Because as Julian can probably speak to much better than I, there's GMP is all about documentation, and getting people to that point is going to be difficult with the margins that we have right now. Julian make a very interesting comment earlier about basically, if I understood this correctly, you're talking about a cost of production of pound at $27 per pound. Did I hear you correctly? 5-6 cents a gram?
I will have to do the conversion, but it's 5 cents per gram.
Yeah, so $27 a pound. So we're at more than 10x that right now for an indoor pound. So certainly the cannabis industry needs to work on that. And as interstate commerce opens up, like I said, I think we're going to have 2-3 years to get our act together before full commoditization. And then, once we're talking about international, there's no way around it. You'll have to become a lean machine.
100%. No, really good insights there. Thank you guys. And I love the quote too of everything is an SOP and needs an SOP. One thing that and also some indication about the quality of importance of quality. So that's kind of where we want to go to next is this topic of quality and standardization. And I want to get a quick perspective from everybody on the panel here, and then we know that Alex is going to have to jump fairly soon for a big brand event. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but hopefully cover one more topic here. Under this umbrella of efficiency, cost per gram, crazy numbers to compete with there from Clever Leaves. But a key dimension, as Julian also mentioned, is quality and what is our product offering. And I think it's different in a recreational adult sense versus pharmaceutical. In the United States, it seems right now still demand for high THC. And there's this price per milligram kind of competition going on. One thing that we do at Adaviv is try to help cultivators, with our machine vision technologies with AI to speed up the experimentation process to help dial in recipes faster. So I wanted to ask Alex first, like, is there a push for more diversification in the quality profiles? And what is that? Is it more cultivars? Is it more diverse profiles, or is it still highest tack? And how do you adapt your SOPs to kind of both innovate but stay efficient, as we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now in Massachusetts, people want high THC. That's beginning to change. It's slowly beginning to change. It's becoming a more terpene-based conversation, but even further than that, flavonoids, esters. The esters are actually more important conversation when you're talking about allowing the nose to pick out what you're going to enjoy. We've been focusing on THC with our Mile 62 brand. Everything in Mile 62 is 28% and above. And we're now going to be focusing a little bit more on high THC and high terpene and high ester content with the new Big Poppy brand that we're announcing today with David Ortiz, Hall of Famer from the Boston Red Sox. That's what we're doing today. We're doing the big launch there. And I was talking with Poppy a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how we wanted to focus a little bit more on flavor profiles and actually do some stuff in the low THC range. Because when you have something that's in the 16, 17, 18% range, it can actually be quite exquisite when married with the right terpenes, and even provide different types of effects than you'll normally get from a high THC product. So we are working on developing that behind the scenes. And the SOPs do have to change, not dramatically, but the SOPs do have to change when we're, doing basically, are we doing a high THC lever? Or are we doing a high variety lever? And at one point we had 53 varieties that we were growing here at Rev Clinics. We've pared that down to 20, and we're able to keep a closer eye on the difference between these different cultivars, and we're able to customize our SOPs to that a little bit more. Right now, we're actually working on updating all of our SOPs and re-educating our entire staff with a new role and a new promotion for our inventory and training manager, Mandy Hayden. And she'll be helping to implement all the new SOPs for changing to these different things that we're trying to accommodate for. I would say the number one thing right now in non-mature markets is THC. The number one thing in super mature markets is still THC, but they want the terpenes too.
Right. Okay, can eat it too.
I would have to completely agree with you on that one, Alex. The market is definitely always one that higher THC content, but I do see a huge push on the terpene taste out there, which I really admire that aspect of the realm. So
yeah, definitely.
Great.
If I may jump in on the whole SOP development.
Yeah.
Dean?
Yes, please.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, and what I'm seeing on this SOP development and you know, on a lot of the work stuff I do, you know, what we see working from a state to state basis is the whole compliance around what products you can use on cannabis. You know, Alex, you being in the state of Massachusetts, you're a little bit more limited to using 25B products, botanically derived products, a lot of beneficial insect products. So, you know, in a lot of operations from state to states, those SOPs can change. So, you know, in states like Colorado and California, you may be able to use a little bit more EPA registered products in your SOP. So it's being able to work with what you have and following those legalities around the compliance, pesticide applications when you're stopping certain thresholds of applications. So all those go into factors on the whole SOP of cultivation.
Perfect.
Let me jump into
That's
add something.
Please.
And it's of course GMP is all about SOPs, but then you have your clients, which is a different world, because if your client is in, I mean, the same product, the same oral solution can have 16 different dossiers, because the development of the product has to be documented in a specific way. If the product is going to Germany, you have to comply with the DAB, which is the regulation over there, and you have to have a dossier, a specific dossier for Germany. But if in addition you have two clients in Germany in different regions, then each region has its own regulation. So you have to put together two dossiers. And if you have two clients in the same region, probably they have a specific requirements, then you have three dossiers for a single product, a single country. Then if you go to Israel, that has a list of 270 something pesticides that are not allowed in the flower, then you have to develop a specific SOP for complying with that market. Same in Australia, where you have the TGO 93 and TGO 100. So you have a list of things that you have to do and you cannot do, and the clients. So it's not only about how you operate, but who are you selling to? So it's about the market. What's the requirement of your client and your country? And that, as you mentioned, Houston, that happens between states in the United States, and that's going to continue happening, because each client has its own requirement, and each jurisdiction also have different definitions. So the ability of adjusting your SOPs for complying with different regulations is going to be of the essence in the near future. I mean, it is right now in the global market. Once the regulation changes in the US, it's going to be of the essence to know how to operate freely in different states.
Mm-hmm. Great points. Thank you guys. Thank you, Julian. Kind of a glimpse, perhaps, of the future and of what we need to be aware of. I think there's a lot to unpack there, and definitely want to dive into some of the things Huston mentioned as well about you know, different solutions out there that vary across states. But how can we drive, you know, how can we make it's very complex, right? Is one message I got out of this. And it's probably a lot for one single operator to handle, especially if you're operating across multiple states. So how systems can help manage this complexity is somewhere we want to go. But I want to be mindful of Alex here and his other commitments. Alex, if you need to jump right now, I thought this would be a good time to pause, but also a time that you could tell us maybe a little bit about your exciting event today and the new brand on that lid of yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. I appreciate you taking the time to put this together. Thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to more of them. So I'm taking off today because we're doing the Big Poppy launch party and press release. David Ortiz, we've been working with him for quite some time now. This deal is 3 years in the making.
Wow.
And this is not a typical celebrity deal. He is part of Rev, and he is part of this process. We have a lot of exciting things coming down the pike that I'll be sure to be released through official channels. But first off is Big Poppy's Sweet Sluggers. These are infused pre-rolls that are anywhere from 32 to 40% THC. They are, instead of a tobacco leaf, it's a green tea leaf. It gives the same kind of little buzz as a tobacco, but without the detriment. And we're really excited about working with David. He's an incredible guy. He's humble. He's down to earth. He really is a man of the people. He comes from the Dominican Republic. He's one of the coolest people you'll ever meet. And we're really excited to do this with him, and really excited that you guys would give us the opportunity to talk about it on the day that we're launching. So we'll have a lot of exciting events coming up in the next 6 months to a year, and still waiting to get that Adaviv hat. So I'll bring
Oh,
it.
you got one. Don't worry. No,
I
we've
bought the
got our
poppy
own.
hat this
We've got
fall.
our own Ortiz big slugger right here as well. Hopefully, we can get the Ortizes together at some point soon for some photo ops.
Absolutely.
No,
And
great, congratulations. Can't wait to see that stuff come out. And like you said, Big Poppy is an icon here in Massachusetts. And like you said, as far as I know, a great person and human being as well. So I'm glad that he's partnering with the great people at Rev, and good luck at the event.
same. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
you.
you.
Wonderful day, Alex.
Cheers.
All right. Let's continue.
Mhm. And I guess we have talked a lot about SOPs and processes, right? And how that can help us enable not only GMP compliance organizations, but how we can help drive more efficiencies. When I want to shift a little bit to, it's not only about processes, it's about people, right? And I think that's also a big challenge on growing high quality cannabis, like labor retention and finding like really skilled labor. We know it's a huge challenge. Then I was wondering, maybe want to hear from you, amigo Julian, like now that you guys have operations in multiple countries, like how do you keep people incentivized? How do you keep the cultivation team or the team around the globe motivated to keep working towards higher quality products in the organization? Yeah.
Thank you. I'll mention a couple of things. First of all, I will have to say that in Colombia, we have a very strong flower industry, which is very similar to the way you cultivate cannabis in some senses. The difference probably is pesticides. Because you can use just certain pesticides in cannabis, or not use chemical pesticides as we do. But it's let's say there are some human talent that you can pursue in the market. And then there's also a pharmaceutical industry. So there's a lot of pharmacists, chemical engineers, like people who knows how to operate under pharmaceutical standards. So it was not that hard. Probably it was hard at the beginning when we were probably 3 or 4 or 5 people that wanted to build this company from the scratch. So for people, it was more difficult to believe in a company with 5 people. Now that we are, I don't know how many, but 300 or 400. Now people want to be part of a company like Clever Leaves, NASDAQ listed, EU GMP certified. So it's a very good experience to work over here. And that's one. That was an advantage here in Colombia. We tried to replicate that in Portugal, where there's a very strong pharmaceutical industry also. And in the region where we cultivate, it's that region is very oriented to agriculture, let's say. So labor is also available in that region. That's one. Second thing, and I believe this is the most important thing in a company, is the internal culture. Why are you doing that? Which is the purpose of the company? Which are the fundamentals of the company? This is not like just blah blah blah. I mean, it's for real. If you can make that people share the fundamentals of the company, entrepreneurship, people first, bring the benefits of cannabis to the people around the world, doing this with full culture of law, traceability, transparency, prioritizing people, as I already mentioned, then you start sharing an internal culture where you collaborate instead of competing between each other. So we become like a real team, not a team trying to show off or something like that. That's of the essence in a company. And then, of course, you have to have a competitive structure of salaries and benefits and everything. But I will say that that's secondary in certain sense, because if people find that what they're doing is helpful and that they are realizing that they are realizing the goals and the personal goals and the company's goals, and they're achieving what they want in life and everything, and they're growing, they're going to stay. I will add, in any case, that the cycle of people in companies are not anymore 20 years or 15 years, but less than that. That's a reality because people continue growing and have new interests. So also accepting that people can continue their path and grow to a different company or sector. That's also part of loving your people, you know?
Totally. Very, very well said. And I know that our Julian can also speak to the importance of organizational change and behavior change to have an effective team and good people and happy people. Julian, any comments from those great points by the other Julian?
No, I totally agree with you, amigo. I think at the end it's about finding the why. It's more important, and then aligning the incentives and the processes to support the people to thrive, right? And then it's about that. And being mindful, as you said, right? Mobility now in labor is huge, and it's for good, right? For people looking opportunities to grow. And I guess everyone as a manager should have that in mind, how you can encourage them to keep growing, even inside or outside your organization.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, I mean, we see it internally as well, you know, building our company, but also we try to often enable folks in the cultivation to you know, execute SOPs better, train more easily, communication with each other, but does, you know, you need that strong team bond to be able to execute on, you might have the best data in the world, but you still need that great communication, great team members to execute on it. So great points. So much to talk about here, but we are running up against the clock, and I wanted to turn to Q&A because we got some really great questions in the queue, and one that I think both Huston and Julian will be really well adept to speak to. And a lot, I think a theme here that has emerged has been, you know, where is this industry going in terms of both the high level market dynamics, but what does it mean for operations and everything from people to standardization and regulations, which includes all this complicated IPM solutions and in the market, and how challenged that is across borders. And so we got a really great question that I kind of think alludes to this theme. And that question is that the industry seems to be moving operations offshore. I mean, in the US, we're still, you know, have a captive market here. But Julian, your points, I think, were really impactful and probably a surprise to some folks. So the question is, if operations are moving offshore, if that is needed to gain these cost savings, is going lean actually, can that compete with the labor costs in a place like Colombia? So is it solely about that lower cost of labor, or how is that going to look in the future in the US and other markets, Europe as well? Julian, would you like to touch on that? I would love to hear your kind of perspective? And do you
Of course.
think American companies can compete?
No, I'll say different, or couple of things. First of all, the cost is not only about labor. It's about, for example, our strategic or the strategic place where we are. We have sun all the year. We're located in the second area in the country with most sun irradiation during the entire year. So we need less electricity. We collect all the water from the rain, and that's the water we purified, and that's the only water that we use in our cultivation. So we basically do not use any other water source. But also the speed. We can build a greenhouse in 1 month of a hectare. We have an infrastructure of 18 hectares under greenhouses with irrigation, lights, everything, and we can build an additional one in 1 month, probably. Let's say 2 months. That will take probably 2 years in other countries. So there are different factors that reduces the cost per gram. That's one part, and we believe that we have an advantage over there, specifically for the U.S. market. So nobody knows when the change in the regulation is going to come. Yep. So some are betting for 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years. While that happens, if you're a local operator, what makes sense is to have a lean operation and to use technology and to have SOPs if you want to be a player until there's a change in the regulation. Once there's a change in the regulation, I believe that that's a different game, but nobody knows when that change is going to come. Probably next year, probably in 2 years, probably 3 years. Everybody's waiting for that, and it's going to happen at some point, probably. Yeah. While that happens, it makes sense that you are very competitive and a lean cultivator.
Very well said. Huston, thoughts there? I have another question that I think you could speak to very well as well, but do want to give you a chance.
No, I just, and this may be kind of off that topic a little bit, but when it comes down to the SOPs in conjunction with lean cultivation practices, it's so crucial for applying, implementing these SOPs, thinking of different products to be applying into one tank mix instead of applying one product, taking all that time and labor to do that, when in reality there's multiple products you can combine into one tank mix, get all those different modes of actions on the plant and cut down the labor, cut down the cost, all in that lean management practice. So I don't know if that fully tied into that. It's simple things like that. That's not necessarily cutting corners, but still being proactive and applying.
Very good point there. I'm gonna try to work a little magic and combine multiple questions and answers into one here, because we had a few, but I think that was a great interlude. One was around what we do and what sensors we use, but you made a great point about combining, whether it's data, whether it's products, but combining that into like an integrated process. So to answer a question about what we do a few things, but we primarily have our core technology in computer vision. So we have machines that are essentially automating some tedious tasks in the scouting. We scan the plants down to a very high level of detail, and we build models to predict stress, expression, pests, and disease, to detect that stuff earlier. And we use all sorts of sensors, multispectral, thermal, and visual as well. But with that data, we also measure plant growth and performance KPIs, and combine that into a software suite that can also engage and help the growers in the field so that they're digitizing what they're doing as well, which includes the treatment aspect. So I think it will be great to see this kind of integration come together, where the knowledge that you hold, Huston, in terms of what treatments work well, what is compliant, can be kind of paired with earlier detections, and then also be kind of automated into a treatment workflow that is more easier for growers to follow and execute, and doesn't require a ton of training and everybody to have the same level of knowledge that you may have in your head, because you have that big perspective and the expertise. So I think that's really exciting for us, and to work with folks like you is to see that integration come together. That's really the future, and it ties into Julian's point as well, that it's really both. It's where you put your grows, but you got to stay competitive in the now and the present with lean and with technology, but be adaptive. And when regulation and legalization does come, there'll be a shakeup. But if you're competitive, you're going to have the advantage. So that was me trying to answer a few questions at once. I think we got time for one more perhaps, and would love both of your quick perspectives on this. I'll start with Huston, but it relates to what we're talking about, but specifically to the size of business. So can you speak to how important you feel business size will be as the industry commoditizes? SOPs are critical for quality and to enable improvement of processes and efficiencies, but with low cost, scale seems to be also critical to gain efficiencies. So how does that trade-off work? How does scale play into the size of the business with vertical integration in mind? And Huston, because you're involved in building out productions, maybe you have a viewpoint on this. Where do you see the industry going? Can small businesses compete?
I think they still can, and we've over time, since this industry has been around, one of the unfortunate aspects of this industry is the retention rate and labor and stuff. So not having organization, people getting frustrated and leaving, and then that kind of ties into certain facilities, say at 5,000, 10,000 square feet, even up to 100,000 square feet plus. But when you don't have that organization, it's kind of a falter. Now, when you have that SOP, whether you're a 5,000 square foot facility and up, and you have that good communication and organization, I think that's going to create an environment for people to stick around and stay afloat and still push out good craft quality products. So I don't necessarily see the smaller facilities going anywhere as long as that communication, SOP, and implementation is taking place in the workforce. So is that kind of what your question was?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. That essentially it's those same tools that we can apply across scale, but that there's no exception to the small guys, right? They might have been easier in the past to have a craft grow, but I think everybody has to maybe start to look at how they can also look at being more efficient in internal, and some of those points that Julian mentioned, reusing water, looking at efficiency and energy use. I think those are key as well. That's where the industry starts to need to look as well, regardless of scale. Julian, maybe you can kind of close us up here with any thoughts on size of business. I know you guys operate big, you operate across international borders, but if and when you guys move into the US in a future state, are you going to be big? Are you going to be small? Do you think there is room for, how do you think the size of the business relates to these factors of efficiency and quality?
That's an interesting question, and I probably answer it by saying that efficiencies can come from different places. The scale is definitely one of them, because if you reduce your cost per gram by dividing the costs in a bigger area, like the fixed costs, then you're more efficient. That's what the theory tells. But in addition, there are many ways of being more efficient. What I do believe, Ian, is that the business evolution is going to be more specialized instead of everybody trying to do exactly the same thing. Companies are starting to specialize in a single moment of the value chain, or in providing services related to the industry. Can tell you, for example, that In the pharmaceutical cannabis or medicinal cannabis, you have to comply with very strict microbiology limits. So there are companies, for example, doing remediation of the flower or irradiation or remediation in different ways for the flower to comply with the levels of microbiology. That's one service that probably 5 years ago there was nobody doing that. Or technology SOPs. Yeah, it's like specializing is very important as the company as the industry evolves.
Yeah. Yeah, no, interesting. I think we could have another webinar just on that topic of specialization and differentiation via specialization. So great point to I think wrap things up. Julian, any last thoughts on your side before we just tell everybody what's next?
No, I was gonna say it like a big thank you, right, to our panelists for taking some time out of your busy schedules to participate in the webinar, for sharing your thoughts about how other organizations can learn from best practices, processes, people, and as we just said, right, like looking for efficiencies from many angles, as Julian was mentioning, and as Huston was saying as well, like trying to understand really well the market you're playing and trying to see how you can get the best out of the tools that you have on hand. And thank you, team. And look forward to having you guys potentially in a future webinar as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you for the invitation, guys.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thanks so much. Again, just reiterating, very thankful for this great discussion opportunity to learn from you guys. Lastly, we also want to learn from everybody that joined today. We had a great group, great questions. We weren't able to get to them all. Here are our contact. We will post our socials as well in the chat box. Please reach out. Please follow everybody here on the panel and Adaviv as well. This will just be the first of many webinars, and we'll be having the next one in Q4. So please stay tuned. Again, thank you to Julian, Huston, and Alex. Great insights. I think everybody learned a lot. For those folks we didn't get to your questions, we are happy to follow up. So we're going to keep track of those questions and use your email to follow up with you and get some insights from these guys as well. Thank you to everybody who attended. Thank you again to our panelists. Let's keep going. Let's keep growing strong together, and talk to you guys soon.
Well,
Thank you, Tim. Let's
really
do this.
appreciate everything.
Bye.
You as well. Thank you, Julian.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thanks.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Yes, indeed.
Pleasure meeting you, Julian.
Talk soon.